Welcome to my channel, Aline's Visit. I'm Aline, a French guide, and I'm presenting you art pieces, artists, places, and museums. Have you ever heard about the French Michelangelo? He was living during the reign of Louis XIV, the Sun King. He was painter, architect, and sculptor. You still don't know who he is, right? Let me introduce you to Mr. Pierre PUGET. He was one of the most talented artists at that time. And he managed to live in the south of France, Marseille and Toulon, without coming at the court of the king in Paris or Versailles. It was quite rare because the courtship was quite mandatory at that time. It was a must, even a national sport.
Pierre PUGET was born in Marseille in October 16, 1620. In 1638, at the end of his contract of 4 years as apprentice with a galley builder, PUGET, like so many European artists of his generation, left for Italy, where he stayed for 5 years, traveling on foot from Livorno to Florence and Rome. During this period, he became familiar with the Baroque style that characterized Italian art at that time. He was particularly influenced by the works of Michelangelo and Gian Lorenzo Bernini, whose energetic and expressive sculptures had a profound impact on his own style. Another Italian artist, the painter Pietro da Cortona, liked Pierre PUGET so much that he decided to give him his daughter's hand to keep him in Italy. But PUGET did not accept and returned to France because he had to take care of his dying mother. On his return, the Duke of Brezé, Admiral of France, commissioned PUGET to design and execute a warship which surpassed in magnificence all that had been seen at that time. This royal galley, whose decorations presented allegories in honor of Anne of Austria, the mother of Louis XIV, was called the Queen and was completed in 1646. But Pierre PUGET pursued at the same time his painter work. It was probably in that year that PUGET painted the Holy Family with a palm tree. PUGET continued to devote himself to painting until 1665. Suffering from a serious illness, he was forced to give up this art for his health. He then devoted himself entirely to sculpture and architecture. Between 1655 and 1657, Pierre PUGET created the caryatides and the main door of Toulon City Hall, inspired by the people unloading sacks of grain from the ships in the harbor of Toulon. In 1660, he signed Hercules slaying Hydra that induced Nicolas Fouché, at that time superintendent of Louis XIV, to commission PUGET to sculpt a piece for his own castle of Vaux-le-Vicomte. Pierre PUGET signed a Gallic Hercules evoking two of his labors. He is sitting on the skin of the Nemean lion, and he holds in his hand the golden apples of the Garden of the Hesperides. It's interesting to notice that Pierre PUGET chose to represent Hercules resting, while so many sculptures of this hero are showing him in action. At the political fall of Fouquet, the statue was seized by the foe and successor of Fouquet, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who installed it in the park of his own castle in Sceaux. Before being arrested in 1661, Nicolas Fouquet requested Pierre Puget to go to Ligurian city of Genoa to choose Carrara marble stones. Puget remained in Genoa for 7 years. Probably for self-protecting measure, it was never safe to stay in the entourage of fallen star. During this time, Puget continued to produce works like a sculpture representing the Assumption of Mary, commissioned by the Duke of Mantua, and he also created 2 works for the Basilic of Santa Maria Assunta in Carignano, Genoa, a Saint Sebastian, and the Saint Bishop Alexandro Sauli. After seeing the caryatid for the balcony of Toulon City Hall that Puget executed, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, when he came to France in 1665, said to Colbert, the superintendent of the kingdom, that he was astonished to have been invited in France, since Louis XIV owned such a skillful artist as Pierre Puget. Allow me to rectify this. Concerning Pierre Puget, the ownership was inexistent, because this proud and independent artist was not to be compared to other artists with their flattering representation of the monarch, like the painter Charles Lebrun or the sculptor François Girardon. Remember that Pierre Puget never felt the urge to be present at the court of Versailles nor Paris. Upon the advice of Gian Lorenzo Bernini, Jean-Baptiste Colbert summoned Pierre Puget to return to France, and in 1670, Puget obtained from Colbert the commission for 2 of his famous works. First, the Milo of Crotone, completed by him in 1682. The statue was placed in the garden of Versailles. Milo was an undefeated wrestling athlete of the antique Olympic Games. He tried to split a tree with his bare hand to show his strength, but one of his hands stayed stuck in the tree trunk, and his call for help were totally ignored, so at the nightfall he was devoured by wolves, that Pierre Puget replaced by a lion deemed more dignified, or maybe for a more graphic impression. Can you feel the irony of this symbol of the man's vanity to be presented to the Sun King himself? In 1684, Pierre Puget finished another symbolic statue for Louis XIV. The theme of the statue is Perseus and Andromeda. Perseus, giant representing King Louis XIV, freeing the young Andromeda who represents France. Note that this is the only representation of a nude woman by Pierre Puget, and the movement of the couple is going in 2 opposite directions. In 1671, Louis XIV commissioned a bas-relief of Alexander the Great, his hero, in which he often identified himself. The scene that Pierre Puget chose to sculpt for the bas-relief is the meeting between Alexander the Great and Diogenes, the philosopher, living like a beggar in the street. At the question of Alexander the Great on what he should do to satisfy a wish of the philosopher, the latter answered, "Get away from my son." Again, one may think about the underlying critic toward the French king and his pompous personality. The motto of Pierre Puget was, "No good could be achieved without pain." And up to his death, In 1694, he never passed a day without work, saying, "I am nourished by great works. I swim when I work at them, and the marble trembles before me, however large the piece may be." The signature on his sculptor, Pierre PUGET, Massilia, sculptor, architect, and painter, attest to his ambitions as an universal artist who knew how to claim and have his creative freedom recognized, like Michelangelo and Bernini, to whom is compared.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation of Mr. Pierre Puget works. If you like this episode, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. If you want me to present you another art pieces or another artist, let me know. Write a comment. And as always, when you are coming to France, you know that I can be your live guide in Paris or elsewhere. Meanwhile, welcome to France. See you next time.